Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jessica Karels, tarot reader, psychic, and energy healer, and she helps people cut through the hustle of life so they can handle life's curveballs. She's also a podcast host. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Glad to be here, AJ. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well, and I'm sure a lot of people, will do very well with all the information that we'll understand. We'll try and focus it around spirituality and entrepreneurship. But first, I would like to them to know you in a better way, Jessica. Because you are a tarot reader, psychic, energy healer, and then you are a gamer. You call yourself a gamer nerd, a
Yep.
podcast host, so many things. So tell for the audience who exactly is Jessica Carroll.
All right. Glad to speak on that. So, as you said, my name is Jessica Karels. I am in the United States in Minnesota, which most people make fun of it either for the accents or because it's cold most of the year. The both are true. I actually started off my professional life. If you had asked me 20 years ago what I would be doing, my trajectory would have been a completely different thing. I really wanted it to get either into gaming or computer programming and all that stuff, but it was not meant to be. I ended up taking a different path within the corporate world. Eventually did get into computer programming, but that was its own thing. So about 5 years ago, was when I really started delving into the concept of spiritual business. Prior to that, I've been studying various spiritual paths, witchcraft, Wicca, a lot of those different more the new age holistic paths within the United States. But 5 years ago, I had a lot of negative things happen in my life, a lot of challenges. My dad had passed from cancer. I had a relationship end, and I had a creative business end within the span of a few months. And what that did was it shook me to the point where I needed help. I actually went to another tarot reader in the area amidst a snowstorm, which people think, okay, Minnesota, you know how to handle snow. This is a snowstorm that Minnesotans could not handle. So it was that type of obstacles that got me from where I was in the city to where this tarot reader was. Um, but it was worth it. Not just the time, the struggle, but and the money, but it was just the whole thing gave me a lot of peace when it came to figure out, well, even with all these terrible things happening, my life was going to be okay. So what ended up happening as a result was I realized with my own studies and my own gifts that I had the opportunity to help the world. I had the opportunity to change things one person at a time. And that's what led me into spiritual entrepreneurship, to be able to reach out and help others. I've studied various modalities or tools that are out there. Tarot is just one of them. Psychic ability, so the power to read a situation and read people without the use of cards, that came afterwards. I studied Reiki as well, within the United States, within the Western system. So learning how to manipulate subtle energy and help people help themselves versus just simply being able to see what's going on. So amidst that, January is going to be the start of year 6 for me in the business aspect. But again, I have been doing this personally for about 2 decades. It's just the difference between professional and not professional is the boundaries we set and the expectation that there is some sort of exchange versus feeling like you constantly have to give and give and give.
Absolutely, and that's right. That's right. People must pay for for the services they get. Otherwise, even I say nowadays that I'm a content entrepreneur. People say that everything is free. Their time is free. Everything else is free, and nobody wants to actually pay for things, especially if they are spiritual in its way and all. So it is good that people understand. They understand every other service, but the services which actually matter, perhaps they don't want to understand. Everybody wants to have free. So good you put it out that way. And I think even in content business, people will have to be much more vocal about it. I am trying to be much more vocal about it. So I say, that if you are offering your services and your products free, tell me that, and then I will do everything free. Though everything is, this sort of thing is free, but somewhere some aspect of commercial has to come in, so that we can continue to give free to those who can actually not afford it. And for the larger good, we can continue to create good content, like talking to you, Jessica,
Mhm.
and bringing out your understanding about spirituality and entrepreneurship. To understand for the audience, Jessica, you went to a tarot card reader. What did you expect to ask? And now that you yourself are a tarot card reader, what is it that others ask from you? What is it that they want to know about their life, which they don't themselves don't know? Is it, and especially I want to know from the entrepreneurship side of the thing. Are Do entrepreneurs come to you? What is it that they want to know?
Mhm.
Help us several things here at the same time.
Sure,
We are all
sure.
interrelated, so I thought, why not ask you at the same time, so that you can answer them at your own pace.
Sure. So when I went to the reader, I wanted to know that things were going to be okay. I was, with everything going on, the one thing I knew that I could change was the project that I had been working on. So, as I said, I was a geek and a gamer, and this was back in about 2017, which feels like a lifetime away when we think about all the change that has gone on in the world. But at that point in time within the United States, for those who are not familiar, who've blocked it out, Donald Trump was president. There was a lot of people who were afraid of what's going on, and there was a lot of division. So the creative project I wanted to work on was a game that helped people come together, a game that took all the division we were seeing in the United States at the time and used the power of play, the power of imagination to help people move past a lot of what we call the surface chatter in order to really be able to see we all had the same needs, we all had the same desires. But some people were against that for some reason. So I wanted to go to the reader to find out, is this going to be okay? The boyfriend didn't really, or the ex at that time didn't really care much about it. I mean, I can't really bring my dad back. So it was like focusing on the one thing I could affect. And the advice and guidance I had was that what you want to do will come back, but it will be reborn in a different way. The ability to change the world, the ability to get people to come together and understand things was going to come anew, but it was not going to take the same form that I wanted. I did not realize at that time, looking back, that it was the spiritual business that I'm building that was that rebirth. Now, as for what other people come to me about, there's two categories. And I bring it up right in the beginning because wherever I go, whether it's doing readings on an app or doing a readings at a store, I always ask the same question. Do you have a specific thing that you want to focus on? Or do you want to keep this more open ended and see what the universe wants you to know? Interestingly enough, AJ, a lot of people who approach me do not have a specific question. They want to see what the universe wants them to know. And I feel that's because we have so much uncertainty in the world. It's hard to pinpoint what to ask about. And also, a lot of people don't know what they want. We've been programmed like with advertising, movie, TV, social media, all these different things we're told we should want. But when we're in that moment asked, well, what do you want? People are like, I don't know. So yeah, I find that as a gift to at least give them insight on, well, what's the next few months going to look like? Here are some themes. And that sparks the conversation of, oh, well, I do want this, or I actually don't want what's coming at me. How do we change it? So that's that conversation point. Do have a couple people who are entrepreneurs who approach me about readings. And I think it's just because of the entrepreneurial state of things, you have to know what you want. You have to know what you need. You have to know what a lot of different things. So it's a lot more strategic. It's not so much about the should I's. or the yes no questions about someone else. In those cases, when an entrepreneur approaches me, they're like, I have this project, I can't tell you the details. I want to know what the environment's like, or I want to know what surprises may come up, or I have two decisions or two options. Tell me what path each option may lead to. And using the tarot and the archetypes that are in the cards, I'm able to guide them through and help them brainstorm and say, well, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think this might relate to? And that then leads to deeper conversations on, okay, well, we got this paths. We've laid these out. You're now the one to pick which path you want to take. I'm not going to tell you what you should do because this is your life and you're only giving me a small slice of what's going on. So I don't really have an educated, the ability to give an educated response. It's up to me, though, to share what I'm seeing so someone else like you, AJ, could make an educated response on how to move forward.
Right, right. Isn't it interesting that people uh, who look at the pragmaticity of everything in terms of the data analytics and everything else, their final decision comes down to, you can say whatever we want to say, on the universe, spirituality, on their inner wisdom, on the cards. How do you look at that? You are yourself an entrepreneur in your own way, and when you see them, how do you manage to calibrate your own business? Do you look at the cards for yourself, Jessica? Does it work for you that way, or is it for only,
So
will it only work for others?
it's a mix of both. So funny that you mentioned data. My quote unquote day job. So what I do when I'm not reading cards is I am a business systems analyst. So I started off as a business analyst, which is, for those who are not familiar, we look at all the data. We look at the data. We look at what we also figure out, well, what data is important and what is extra fluff. And that actually ties neatly to tarot because in business analytics, it's pattern recognition. It's identifying trends. It's looking for things that we can weave a story together on. Now, with tarot, there's so much information in those cards. There's so many pictures on there. It's the same thing. It's identifying those patterns and weaving them together. But it's not simply saying, okay, well, these cards are telling me to do X, Y, and Z. It's these cards are showing me a pattern here on the paper. Where do I see this pattern in another area of my life? And using that as, okay, well, based on that, what could I be doing different or what should I be keeping an eye out for? So I don't see, I mean, I will use tarot, but I will also use hard data as well. I use tarot as a way of figure of breaking out of whatever tunnel vision I have on a situation, or saying, well, I know exactly what's going on. And the cards are giving me additional insight. Say, okay, maybe I should ask different questions, or maybe I should look at different things that I'm not used to looking at in order to find more answers for myself.
Right, right, Jessica. Maybe the tarot cards hold more data than in the real life data we have got. It's like the
Yeah.
churning of data. So you got only a sample size, whatever the sample size, the data, your analysis will be based on that.
Hmm.
Maybe tarot card comes with a much, much humongous size of data, and which we don't know about, but it can come out with that.
Hmm.
Help us understand, for the audience, for the general people, should they consider as tarot cards, psychic, and energy healing, all this as witchcraft or something, or is it much more different than that? You can also you discern a person's physical and mental health and commune with spirits, and that too from a young age. Does that come into the picture? Do you still need tarot cards, or you can still see a person
I
entrepreneur and can come to know about their mind?
So tarot cards for me, it's a tool. Kind of like how nowadays, like, well, I'll go back a couple decades. Like if we think back into the 80s, we have the old school calculators. We have it where it's like the 10 key plus minus divided whatnot. And we had that available. And as we grew up, we had to deal with classes like calculus where we had the scientific calculators. That is a tool. Nowadays, we have these things that have a calculator on them.
Absolutely.
So we don't have to constantly either think on our own what the answer to a question, mathematical question is. We have the tools that are available and it makes it easy. It doesn't mean that we don't know how to do it ourselves. It's just we have that bandwidth, that ability to focus on other things. For me, having the tarot is like having the smartphone with a calculator on it. I don't need it, but it makes things a lot easier for me when it comes to discerning the energy, discerning the patterns, figuring things out so I could be more present with whoever it is that I'm talking to. And getting them to think about their situation and to think about, well, with this guidance, what might those next steps look like? Versus if I was focusing without the tools, it's hard to maintain that conversational level because I'm getting so much information and I'm trying to process it and figure it out. I'm basically being turned into the computer versus I'm the person that has the computer or has the tool. So to use that as the metaphor, I can do it without the cards. It's just a bit more difficult because I'm taking on a lot more of the process myself.
Right, right. Help us understand. You said that people. I see a lot of, even I'm not away from it. In our day-to-day life, we keep on asking things. That I need this, I need this, I need answer to this question. We even go on Chat GPT and ask so many questions. Nowadays. But you said that when a lot of people come to you, they always look at the choose the open ended option. They don't
Mhm,
exactly, maybe they think that if they whatever questions they have, that will be part of that whole answer system, and they keep it to
mhm,
themselves. Okay, I can ask later on. But I want to understand is that, why is it that people don't know in that sort of a situation when they actually need to make that choice? They can just get it. It's like getting the right prompt and you get the right answer. So they just ask you straight away, Jessica, this is what I want an answer
mhm.
to. But they don't do that. Why is it like that? Is it the lack of understanding themselves, but they understand themselves outside that whole atmosphere? What is it? You talk about,
Yeah, I think
that
it's
hustle culture has,
there's
you talk about hustle culture has affects us spiritually. Is
mhm.
that the reason here? Help us understand
Yeah,
this
I feel
part
that
of the human
yeah.
nature.
Yeah, there's 2 things. Sometimes, like, for instance, I do tarot readings on an app, and it's the pay per minute, whatnot. In those cases, people are coming in, they have a very specific question. 99 out of 100 times, it's the question of how do I get my ex back? Or what does my ex feel about me? And it's like, and I know it sounds a little cheeky on there, but in that case, I understand. It's people working through their feelings of loss and the fear of change. And that's what leads to that. As for why people who meet with me in person, why they're like, I don't know what I want, um, they might be approaching tarot or psychics or whatnot as, okay, this is a curiosity and not and they haven't had that time or they have not given themselves that the time, I should say, to really dig down and say, okay, well, if I'm going to have this experience and this interaction, what do I want to get out of it? So sometimes it is people not giving themselves the times to prepare, but I feel a lot of it is either people don't know what they want for real because we are living such a society that pushes, 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 and we're having to focus on everyone else's needs or wants, that we don't have to give ourselves time to focus on our own needs or wants. The other thing I think is that some people are just scared to share what they want or to share this is a genuine concern for them, because they feel ashamed or they feel guilty to even have that desire in the beginning. And others have mocked them for it, or they just simply see that they feel like they don't have a place in the world. So, how dare they have these wants or desires? And my role as a tarot reader in that case is when I see the patterns show up in the cards to be non judgmental unless they're doing something very, very terrible. In that case, we have law enforcement. But in the vast majority of situations, it's reminding the other person, You're a human and you are having a human experience. Your concerns, your desires, your fears, the things that disgust you, those are all natural, normal things and should be embraced. And it's a matter of helping the person get to that point, or at least open the door to that when I do those more open ended readings where the person doesn't know even what to ask.
Right. And does it happen that there is not a great reading for the person and you have to convey it, or it's always about the good things and not the not so good
Oh,
things?
I actually in those open-ended readings, I include a section when it comes to their challenges, when it comes to their struggles. If I'm doing a forecast reading, forecast being looking at, well, what might we experience in the future? I've had positive and negative. And I really wouldn't say negative as negative unless it's saying that they're going to die or something like that, and that's like next to never. But it's negative as in we have challenges, that things may not go exactly the way they want, but at the same time, it may still lead them to something they may want down the road. So, in those cases where I see something negative, like a relationship issue, a job issue, the potential for illness, the potential for a financial loss, I always frame it two different things. One, it's not set in stone. They always have the ability to change things. Granted, their ability to change may depend on a lot of external factors, but they do have the ability to influence the outcome. And I always walk through potential, what's the reason behind it and how do we move forward on it? It's like, what's the reason behind it may be a contributing factor. It may be something that they are not aware of. But now simply having it in the awareness, they're able to choose differently and how to change things. I mean, part of it is changing it might be a change in mindset, a reframe. If we can't change the physical reality of a situation, we can change the mental reality by how we perceive it or how we emotionally respond to it. If it is a physical thing, I'll be like, all right, well, this is the level of change you need to do to completely alter the outcome, or you can learn how to accept it. And all I'm doing at this point is being that voice for the things that surprisingly, the things they already know, because a lot of times people are not surprised. They know what I'm saying or they know what I'm referring to, but I'm giving voice to them to actually be able to face it.
Right, right. Uh, do political leaders also connect with you and ask for your expertise to understand what they want to understand about themselves?
I've heard anecdotal stories about this, about various political leaders. Having tarot or psychic clients, or but because of confidentiality, the reader is not going to outright say who that is. They might say, oh, I work with politicians or I work with whatnot. I actually have took part in a psychic fair or in a community fair in my local city. It was an art fair, but they invited me in as well, because they wanted to have a variety of different people and businesses there. And we had local politicians show up. And by locals, we're talking like council members, mayors, mayoral candidates, those sorts of things. And while none of them had a reading with me, they were intrigued by what was being offered. So that tells me there is that interest. There wasn't like, get out of here. It was like, we want to learn more. So I do believe that politicians, celebrities, major figures, that some of them do believe enough that in spiritual things that are out there beyond our physical understanding, that they will look to spiritual guides, not religious figures, but spiritual guides, for insight on what they might want to consider in the future.
Right, right. Let me understand this spiritual practice. The way we humans have created or built our life, I guess there are more questions that even chat gpts or any artificial intelligence can answer. For that, we will have to either go within us and find those answers, or maybe we will have to take help from a person like you who has got that capacity to to be able
Mhm.
to aid you, to assist you to find yourself. And that is where the future lies, is that how do you see this whole business of spirituality going forward? Is it that people will are becoming more educated, so they look at these things with more cynicism, or is it because more education leads to more questions and they are not going to find it themselves, so they come to the spiritual part of the scheme of things? And that is where, so how do you explain this spiritual business to people, and what is it that they can expect from this? Will it solve
Mhm.
their problem, or will they need to still make that journey alone within themselves to come out for the right answers? And tarot reading and anything else
Yeah.
will just be that guiding force for them.
I feel it's more of the latter there, AJ. I mean, I can give them as much wisdom as possible, as much insight. I could predict out the future with stunning accuracy for them, but they're still the ones that have to walk the path alone going forward. And that's, I feel, something that people don't understand, at least within the United States, where within the United States, it's still considered a Christian nation, and a lot of what Christianity has is almost like you funnel to religious leaders. You have your pastor, you have whatnot. You have the churches that have all those different hierarchies. So it's a lot of it on the surface is about listening to others. We look at social media, we look at our celebrity culture. So a lot of it is using others as the focal point or as the decision making point for your life going forward. And I do not want to have that as a tarot reader or as a psychic or any of that. I believe that my role is more like a guide versus a guide and potentially a teacher versus the director versus the person who commands and tells people this is what you should be doing. That is not my role there. That is not, I do not want that responsibility. I do not want that level of authority. I shun leadership in my day-to-day job, but I'm an informal leader. I do not want to be the boss or manager of anyone else's life. And I feel like that's an important thing, is to remind people that in the end of the day, they're responsible for their own decisions. They're responsible for how they respond to the world. My role is to guide them on that. It's kind of like Yoda from the whole Star Wars series, but I'm not jumping on people's backs and making them use me as the little backpack as they're running around doing stuff. It's like we have a meeting and then I go back to my place and they go back to theirs and life goes on until they want to talk with me again.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is much to learn about all these things. And as I said, perhaps the biggest one is to learn to travel with it. And that's where they will get the answers. As long, but be that as it may, Jessica, tell us, those people who want to learn more about these things from you, and also those people who want to engage with you professionally and know more about themselves, what's the best way for them to do so?
Fastest way is going to be my website, themysticgeek.com, and that's going to have all my information. It has links to all of my social media out there. I am on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter as my mains. I occasionally post to Facebook, but it's also the fun thing about being an entrepreneur is having to choose where you put your time and energy. And right now, things like TikTok are a bit more fun, especially since I can use some of the recent video games that have come out as a talking point when it comes to spirituality, or how some of these stories do have a spiritual component. Because sometimes we think spirituality and non-spirituality are like separate. They're your life. They're kind of intertwined, but it's a matter of looking to find that.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.